All right, we're going to call the meeting together. I would ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session has been held on Thursday, September 11th, 2014 at 5 o'clock p.m., the fifth floor conference room, for a KDOT update on major projects, followed by the Casino Charitable Contributions Grant Committee intent and process, and immediately followed by an executive session regarding litigation. Roll call. Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Holland.
Here. All right, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and we have, there are a number of significant projects going on in our community right now that KDOT is spearheading that are very important to the transportation and the economic development in our community, and I thought it would be helpful if we would have someone from KDOT come and present these projects to us so we could keep track on. They're usually the ones that we get a lot of phone calls about as commissioners. People want to know what's going on and what's being built and why, and I think they give us a great opportunity. So I wanted to thank MoDOT for being here as well, and so I will turn it over. KDOT's here and MoDOT.
Yes.
We have both dots. All the dots are in the house.
There you go.
With the US 69 bridge is a joint project. So, Mr. Tobin, would you like to do introductions for us today? Our new interim director of public works and 40-year employee, Mike Tobin. Take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor, Board of Commissioners. First of all, I'd like to say that both these departments have always been great for us to work with. They keep us informed, and for the most part, we've always had a great working relationship with them, especially with KDOT, because naturally, I mean, we're in their backyard, in their ballpark. And in the interest of brevity, I will say, Jim, I'll let you take it, and I'm sorry, but I don't know your name from MoDOT.
My name is Lisa Stubbs. I'm working with MoDOT on the US 69 project. So.
Okay, well, I'm Jim Pickett, Metro Engineer for this area, and really appreciate the opportunity to come. I think what we will do, or what I have planned on doing, is zipping through these slides. I think any one of these projects we could spend the whole time talking about, so I'll try to get through those and leave some time for some questions at the end. The three projects that I would like to talk about, although these aren't the only projects we're working on in unified government, the I-70 at K7 interchange project. That is the project we're working on spending a lot of time on. The first three phases of the project are funded for construction. Phases 4 and 5 are those that would be beneficial in near term if funded. So I'd like to talk about those just a little bit later. And later phases can be constructed when needed. The 10-phase project, that's one thing about it, is that it's not all needed now. It can be constructed at a later time when it's needed. Lisa's here to also share on the US 69 Fairfax Bridge Replacement Project. It is a MoDOT administered project, but we as KDOT, we're handling a lot of the local affairs on that and the utilities and those types of things, and just want to make sure that things go smoothly. The design builder has been selected and work will begin soon. And the Lewis and Clark Replacement Project, as you know, the study was completed in December of 2012, which gave us a vision of how we were going to head toward the replacement of that project, of that system of structures. Design is underway with a target of a December 2016 letting. That's what we're working toward, and as I know you've been involved with the aesthetic design considerations that are either finalized or just in the very last phases of being finalized. And this project is not funded for construction, but is in the running, and I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. Just real briefly, this was the letting schedule for the I-70 at K7 project, and most of that you don't need to know. The top three of those have already been let, and the top one has been completed. Most of the west half of the interchange there is underway and should be completed about Thanksgiving time. Traffic should be on it and enjoying the benefits from it. And the 118th Street project, that'll be completed about Christmas time. There will be a short piece of it, closure needed next year, but essentially it will be completed in time for Phase 3 to be let this December. And that will be the I-70 portion from west of K7 to 110th Street. That'll give us the 6 lanes there, and we'll take those first 3 phases to completion. We'll be looking at 2 construction seasons on Phase 3. I would like to mention Phase 4, and that would be, and the way I've been explaining that is the first 3 phases are like three legs of a stool, and the fourth piece, or Phase 4, would add a lot of capability and add a lot of time that would handle growing traffic. So I'd like to have you consider that as you work toward a local consult coming up here the 24th of this month. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because I've already talked about those. Phase 1, I would like to mention the construction cost on that one, $18 million. The piece that has been most disruptive to K7 traffic in Bonner Springs there was scheduled to have been completed this last Monday, the 7th. The contractor has been delayed, and so technically is in penalty right now. I expect that the traffic should be normalized for the most part by Saturday night. At least that's our schedule, and by mid next week we should be pretty well normalized on K7 through Bonner Springs. The rest of that work will be on daily lane closures and those types of things. Phase 2A and 2B, that's the bridges over I-70 and needed so we can do Phase 3. And the construction costs are as listed there. Phase 4 that I mentioned, I'll just take a minute to give a little sales pitch on it. It adds the westbound I-70 to northbound K7 CD Road, and what that does, that'll relieve the event traffic that now backs up on I-70. As a key component of it, adds capacity to the Phase 1 ramps, free movement eastbound I-70 to northbound K7 via new loop ramp, and eases K7 to I-70 westbound. $36 million project. I'd like to ask for your consideration on it. I might just mention on Phase 5, that's been highly controversial with the city of Bonner Springs. And just this week, there's been discussion going on, and we received a letter back from them just yesterday that indicates that they have considered the ramifications and impacts to Bonner Springs and have come up with a worry list, or a list of things that they would like to have us address. And I believe that if we can satisfactorily work through that with the city-state agreement, we'll have their approval for Phase 5. So that's some things we're working on, trying to move forward and show the benefit of that. Later phases, they'll be constructed as funds are available. Total estimated cost for the remaining phase will be $165 million. It's a lot of money, but it won't be needed. All those phases won't be needed for many decades. Total of all the phases, right at $300 million worth of construction. Current funded phases of about $58 million construction costs. I'd like to mention the KTA maintenance facility. As you probably know, or most of you know, the KTA maintenance facility has been relocated further west, about 7 miles, and it is currently being used for a staging facility for the contractor. That will be used through Phase 3, and then all that, except for the tower. The tower is going to stay in 2 point-of-presence locations for fiber, but the rest of that will be regraded and grassed, and so that'll be less of a negative impact.
Will that area will the state retain it, or will it be available for development?
It is owned by the Turnpike, and I guess that would be subject to a later discussion.
Okay.
The piece that is completed is Riverview Avenue, and as you can see, the structures are extended to the south, which will allow I-70 to move to the south. Of course, the new piece will be off of traffic, so traffic can remain the same until we get the first piece made, and then we'll start shifting traffic onto the newer construction as we complete the I-70 work. But this is a pretty nice view of how the entrance to the golf course turned out very nicely. The 122nd Street connection to Riverview, and the piece of Riverview there the right-of-way has been turned back to the city of Bonner Springs, and I believe all is satisfied and happy with that project. Just a real quick look at the aesthetics. This is something that the local units of government weighed in on, selected, and I think looks quite nice. Now let's jump
Please
on.
note the pedestrian access and bike lane. I appreciate that.
Took a lot of discussion on that, and we were successful in getting that included. Also on the US 69 bridges over the Missouri River, that was also a topic of considerable discussion, and we were successful in getting that included. Just a quick update, and I'd like to give credit to the district engineer of MoDOT, Dan Nick. We had been wanting to move forward with this project on KDOT side for quite some time, but it just wouldn't fit into Missouri's schedule, and lo and behold, when Dan come on board, he said, let's find a way, and we did. Got the environmental work done in 2013. The design builder selected in July. As we speak, design survey, geotechnical investigation are going on right now. You're going to see, I said you're going to be seeing some work pretty quick. Here in September, you're going to see construction starting on the crossovers there north of the bridge, so that all traffic can be moved over to the northbound structure. That's going to be maintained all the time that we're tearing out the southbound structure and constructing the new bridge. That's going to happen sometime in October. Earlier this week we met with General Motors, and we kind of laid this out to them as well. Traffic about like I said, mid to late October, I would say. Mid-October, we're going to be closing Harvester Road, another thing that we've been working in conjunction with the unified government. I'm so sorry. With the unified government on the details of that, and we have, I believe, all the things have been submitted to the unified government Public Works for review, and that's in process. And our target is to give at least 30 days notice before that is closed. We plan on demolition beginning in December, and then one thing about this, we won't be having a whole lot of traffic shifts going on. We get into that head-to-head traffic on the northbound bridge. It's going to stay that way until we're ready to open the new bridge, essentially. Mid-17, now Lisa, I might ask you to step in here. I believe after we get all traffic over on the new bridge, then we can start demo on the remaining bridge, and that's about July of 17.
Yep, that's correct.
Would you like to say anything?
I just wanted to mention, I handed out a newsletter to everybody. We are planning on having a newsletter come out about once a month to keep everybody up to date on what's going on with the project. If you're interested in receiving that newsletter, please go to the website, and there's a spot there that you can click on that to receive updates. Please put your name in for those updates, and we'll get you on our newsletter mailing list. That's an electronic mailing list that we send out to everybody. We're not going to have a webcam on this. There's just not a really good location to do a webcam, but we're going to try to take lots of pictures and let everybody know what's going on with the project as we go forward, so that everybody kind of gets an idea of where we're at, what's going on, and what's being built every week. So.
Total project cost is around $79 million. As most of the road work is on the Missouri side, so our share is a little less than 50% of the total project, but it's well into the mid-30s. There were 5, I won't spend much time on this, but there were 5 shortlisted high-quality design build teams on this project. After the 5 were selected, Kiewit Baker dropped out for just a business reason, I'm certain. We had 4 good high-quality proposals, and after all the dust settled, American Bridge Garver was the selected design builder. Here's a plan view. You've probably all seen this. One thing that you'll notice there is the bike path on the east side of the structure, which was as requested by the unified government, and we really didn't get any pushback on that. And you can see the roundabout on the north end and some things like that. Well, one thing that I'd like to point out is this design builder had the shortest bridge, and they also put the new bridge as close as possible to the northbound bridge that's remaining, so their impact on everybody is just as the least that it could possibly be.
Can you go back to that real quick?
Yes.
If so you see on the east side, the bottom of the picture, the bike path and pedestrian path. As this is completed, it will be an excellent connection point from a levee trail on the Fairfax Levee, bike path that could come down and access that and go across and access the levee trails that are already open on the Missouri side. Hike and bike on the levees in Missouri is very common. It is not allowed yet on the Fairfax levee, but we're working to open that. But this bridge will be an excellent connector for the two, and I'm delighted that we have that bike access. One of the reasons bike trails in Wyandotte County have been so far behind our neighbors in Johnson County and in Missouri is because we are on this peninsula between the two rivers, and it's been this next generation that's valued bike and pedestrian access across the rivers. So now that we have that, I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us.
Here is a cross-section of the new structure, and as you can see, got shoulders on both sides and the 10-foot bike ped lane there on the east side. All of the supporting structure is going to be underneath the bridge. It won't be above it is like the truss structure that we have now. Here's a view looking from Missouri toward God's country. And as a nice looking structure, and this at least gives us a picture of what we can anticipate the final product being. Quick facts, I won't spend much time on that, but there's a lot of parts and pieces, 3.1 million pounds of rebar, etc. That's be going into this nice new addition to the area. Anything, Lisa, before we go on to Lewis and Clark Viaduct?
No. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me. The email address is on there also. So.
In our public meetings that we had in preparation for both the Lewis and Clark Viaduct and the US 69 bridges is let's make sure that we don't close both of them at the same time. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more. But as you'll see there, phase one is the westbound structure, and that's going to be the piece that we're hoping to let in December of 16 and start work on it early in 2017. Phase two and phase three are huge components, but they would really, just shows the good vision that has developed out of the study done in 2012. I just, in the last couple of weeks, I've been involved in discussions about the FY 2017 to 2020 priority bridge projects. That's where this will fit. This is a candidate for funding, and as I mentioned earlier, the local consult process is coming up now. I just asked for your support, and in my conversations with Bill, I think this is an important project to the unified government, and that would be a good time to talk about this. The plans are about 10% complete, and in talking to the consultant, the field check is scheduled for next year, but will likely be this fall. So in my opinion, sooner is always better. In case we hit a snag later on, we won't be slipping the schedule any. Our plan is to have another public meeting in the fall of 2015. We'll be discussing the final appearance of the bridge, discussing about how we're going to maintain traffic and how we're going to handle public communication. We've already had one larger meeting with Kansas City, Missouri, MoDOT, KDOT, Unified Government, talking about how we're going to handle maintenance of traffic. Target letting date, as I said, December 2016. Work on this will not start before US 69 bridge is open to traffic. And we'll have control of that, so that will not happen. As I said, this is not funded for construction. Those announcements won't occur until next summer, just because we don't announce projects that far in advance due to funding questions. So that's what we want to work toward. And just for your information, the phase one estimated construction cost is around $40 million. And I didn't put those on there, but phase two, as I remember, is low 60s, phase three, 40 some, and the total identified phase is around $200 million. So that's, I was hoping to get through in 15. We didn't quite make it, but I didn't want to talk all the time and not give you an opportunity to ask questions.
Commissioner Kane.
Yeah, just for the record, who's paying for all this?
This, of course, one thing that we make maximum advantage of federal funds, and those will be involved on all the projects. So, yeah, it's KDOT projects.
Like I said, the better question is, we're not paying a dime.
Do we have a local match on any of them?
No.
Jim, could you go back to the curve on the Lewis and Clark Viaduct? And I guess my question, as you designed or you're planning, what's the planned change that's coming into how the curve is now? I mean, as you ramp back over, I mean, has this come over and ramps to eastbound traffic or westbound traffic, which is phase 3?
In order to make that work, and that's why we had to know this before we designed phase 1. Phase 1 is designed to allow that movement, to where it will be graded such to where it can go over and then leave clearance for the ramp, which will be a ramp then going on into downtown Kansas City, Kansas. It doesn't show on this picture, but there are plenty of other documents I can give you that would show that more clearly.
I guess I was just trying to get at the change from where we're at today, because it's a pretty tight curve as you come on when you're going westbound on I-70 as you come across before as you curve to go south. So
Okay.
this changes that, right? So it's a
It
different
changes
or
that.
less
If you'll
gradual?
notice, those are down there. I believe that's right. I don't, they are so tight right now. These are much broader and
Okay.
safer and meet current design standards.
All right, I see.
Any other questions or comments? So if this is about 200 million, the Lewis and the 69 interchange out of, or bridge out of Fairfax is about 80 million. And the funded portions, the first 4 phases of I-70 is about how much?
The first 3 was 58, and then the phase 4 would add 36 to that.
And phase 4 is not yet funded?
No, sir.
Okay. So substantial dollars being invested in the infrastructure in our community. And I think that Bonner Springs' interest in obviously the K7 I-70 is high, as is ours. And I think the concerns I've heard, they want to maximize economic development around that. And they have a lot of investment already there and just want to make sure that the interchange maximizes that instead of minimizes. I think those are the nature of their concerns, and certainly we want to support them in that effort.
One thing that we were highly pleased with, that first phase of the project needed about 500,000 cubic yards of borrow. And if you've been by there, you've noticed some grading that has been done on adjacent property, which has made that much more likely and easier for a developer to come in and work.
That's great. Commissioner Murguia.
I just have a quick question. So you said the funding comes from the state?
These are projects that go through our process, and we maximize federal funds. So there'll be federal funds in each one of these projects, but there will be KDOT funds in as well.
So are these federal funds coming directly to the county, or,
No, they're administered by KDOT.
so, which is part of the state?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So they come to the state, and then the state decides how to spend, is that who decides how to spend these dollars?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious. And how much of an investment again, did you say, was made on these roads?
Well, when this is funded, it'll be about 200 million, but none of this is funded yet.
That's correct.
What's the dollar amount funded for, was this next year?
Well, 58 million on I-70 and K7.
Yes, and then probably, let's just say 32 or $4 million on the US 69.
And I'm just curious, how does that compare to past years of funding for roads in Wyandotte County?
I'm saying we're up.
We're up. Okay.
All right. All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Looking forward to these new improvements and appreciate your partnership. I have some other projects that I'd love for you to work on, and you'll be hearing about those as well.
Well, you know, Bill and I have talked about this quite a bit, and this is the time where it pays to put a lot of thought into planning for the next round of projects. And that's what you have to do. You have to keep projects in the pipeline. And when the more thought you put into those, and particularly if there's an economic development component, it just adds points in the selection process. And I know you're doing that, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I think that speaks to the role of our CMIP projects. When we look at CMIP and we think about, you know, we paid for State Avenue, a lot of State Avenue, the last phase out of our pocket. It was about a $4 million payout, if I remember the number correctly, for the last phase of State Avenue that we paid directly out of unified government money. When you think about these kinds of projects, we're putting money right now into studies of different highways and roadways that KDOT could partner with. And it's difficult in our CMIP projects because our funds are so limited. You could either do some more grind and overlay in the neighborhoods, or you could take some of that money and put it towards the kind of engineering studies that we need in order to have a project in the pipeline for KDOT. The payoff, though, is if we have good projects in the pipeline, the majority of the funding then comes from the federal and the state rather than from our local. And so we benefit from doing the studies and partnering in the studies to see about the economic impact as well as the engineering part. So it just, for us to keep in mind when the staff comes forward and says, you know, we really want to put $100,000 or $200,000 into this study, that's a lot of grind and overlay money, but it could leverage millions of dollars worth of state and federal dollars. So it's part of the balance when we see, because we have over $100 million right now happening with no match. And we want another $100 million with no match, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's important for us to keep in mind in terms of how this all works. All right, Mr. Tobin, 40-year
Mayor,
employee, Tobin.
Thank you. Mayor, if I might add, KDOT was great to work with on that first phase of the I-70 K7 project, and they went out of their way to help us, because we have a golf course there, a going business, plus Bonner, the transition and the help with the traffic, and even on the east end of the project, which Jim really did talk about on 118th Street, they worked with us real well in there, and it turned out great.
It really has, better than, it's going to be nice. And it's not, we were so concerned that we were going to negatively impact that hole, and it just hasn't. So
That's great. All right. Have you shortened that hole any? Because it's a pretty long reach. Anyway. All right.
thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our this portion of it. The next portion is the casino grant funding, and we're going to go straight into that. We're back in the house. We just want to give a thanks to our audience tonight for coming out to see us. Appreciate the commitment.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. What I've handed out, this is on behalf of the committee that was working on this, but this is last year's casino grant recommendation report, and also attached are a list of the things that the commission said they would and would not fund with the charitable dollars. The committee of commissioners that worked on that was Commissioners Walters, Murguia, and McKiernan. And so I would turn it over to them to make their presentation about next year's funding.
So I'm going to take this because Brian had to leave for a minute. But on behalf of our committee, we have a recommendation, and the recommendation is for a shift in the way we've been handling the charitable dollars. And it won't come as any surprise to any of you because we talked about this last year. So I'll try to make it really short, and then we'll just go through with questions. I think that'll be easier. One of the things that we are suggesting is that we divide the casino charitable dollars by district representative, district commissioner. That's correct, right? Because we're including the at-larges, right? And the mayor. Yes, that's correct. So the mayor and the at-large commissioners and the district commissioners is that we divide the casino money by that to use for healthy lifestyle projects within our district, where the commissioner in that district will have lots of discretion on how that money is distributed. So I think I just really don't want to make a big presentation. It's pretty self-explanatory. If people have questions, Commissioner Walters and I could probably answer them. Just in general, looking for feedback, thoughts.
Commissioner Kane.
Well, I think it's an outstanding idea. It makes it a more balanced approach to each district instead of 3 or 4 districts getting the bulk of the money. In certain cases, some districts getting none of the money. So, and I think I think it does what the intent was originally, but it spreads it out through the community and not just in a couple areas.
Commissioner,
How does this grant criteria prevent the money from searching for a term being doled out in, maybe I don't have a conception of what the size of each.
can you speak directly into the mic? I want everyone to hear your question.
How does this prohibit utilizing the charitable funding in a way that, you know, I don't know how much money each of us will get.
Are you
But-
talking about impact, Commissioner Walker? I don't.
Well, I mean, I don't want to see, you know, 10,000 to this group and 5,000 to this, and you know, every group in each district gets a little bit of money, which is of no maximum impact. So, what is the criteria by which we're going to prevent that from happening?
So to your first question, how much money, if you divided $500,000 by 11, it would be approximately $45,400 per person.
Approximately.
Well, it's $45,454.54.5.
I'm pretty sure he did that in his head too.
Very
Right here.
impressive.
Me and Lou, we've got it right here together.
Very impressive.
I actually, sorry Lou, I pulled out a calculator.
Over here.
So it'd be $45,000 each. In the last phase, they were generally funded in about $50,000 chunks. So your question is there a minimum or maximum in terms of what people can give out?
That and I guess, you know, this idea that every district has to have a little money spread around in their district reminds me of a time when years ago each commissioner on a sales tax revenue, each city councilman got $1 million. And the best of my recollection is every councilman piddled that money away on little tiny things, trying to placate every little group or interest group in their particular district. Now, I'm not opposed to this, but you know, $5,000 doesn't go very far. And if I get $45,000, I'm certain I've got more than 9 groups to give it to. So, do I piddle 5,000 apiece out, or do I give 45,000 to one group where it might have a significant impact on service delivery?
So I'd just like to comment in regard to that. So as a person that runs a not-for-profit in her real life, in her full-time life, and I raise money as my profession, I will tell you, money doesn't necessarily impact the impact that you would have on a community. The amount of money doesn't necessarily. As you all know, here in Wyandotte County, we have a number of neighborhood groups. We have a number of, beyond neighborhood groups, we just have a number of groups that are working to make our community better. I think we've all seen across the county how a little bit of money to an organization can make a giant difference in our county. So I've seen that firsthand. I've also seen that throughout the county. And then let me turn it around on the other side of things. $500,000 in the scheme of things is not a lot of money. If you use just one example, for example, like curb and sidewalk, we've had this discussion before. For one block of curb and sidewalk, on average, you're going to pay about $40,000. So if Commissioner Holland wants to pay one block of curb and sidewalk,
Former Commissioner Holland.
or, I'm sorry, Mayor Holland, I apologize. Sorry, Mayor Holland, if he wants to pave one block with curb and sidewalk, there goes all of the money that he has in the current account. And even if you had a full $500,000, you're talking about a fairly limited geographic area. So I think it really is a great opportunity to reach out to those smaller, struggling groups that make big differences in our community and get them some funding. But that's, one person's opinion.
Commissioner Kane.
Would this include the school districts?
It's the committee's recommendation that it does. We specifically talked about schools K through 12. Yeah.
Could receive funding.
Yes. Yes.
And the reason I ask that is I think that's important, that the schools are short here, short there, and if we're really going to try to help somebody and to help our youth, that'd probably be a good place to put some of the money.
Right.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, I'm glad I wouldn't have to personally track the monies nor administer them, because that could really be an interesting situation, depending on how many people you doled it out to, and to keep track of the vetting of it. Is that group really going to use it for what it's supposed to be used for? Are our administration supposed to be keeping track of what the money really went to? Just a lot of questions like that. As a person who would just love to hand money out to people and think they're going to do the best, that would be wonderful. But I want to see accountability with it. And so how do we do that in this way?
Okay, so I don't see my committee members reaching for their mic or anything. Do you want me to? Okay. So we were concerned about that also, Commissioner Philbrook. Yes, we really wanted to see great transparency and accountability. And we had several suggestions. One, all of the expenditures go up on our website on the front page so everybody in the community can access that and know exactly how every dime of that was spent. We obviously would have to work with the county administrator's office. One of the suggestions is that Joe Connor would be a great candidate for managing these funds. However, that's really something we'd have to work out with our county administrator on where he thinks that's best fit for. If you recall, we all did a great job, including staff, with the CNIP program. And that's very similar to what we're talking about here. We would like to see that handled in the exact same way, very transparent. Each commissioner represents a different area of Wyandotte County, and as much as we are very similar, as you know, we're very diverse and we're very different, and our constituencies could have very different needs. As you know, in Commissioner Markley's district, there are lots of rural areas. In my district, and Commissioner McKiernan, Commissioner Maddox, it's very densely populated. So it just depends. There are different needs with that kind of geographic area. So having the flexibility of a small amount of money will provide us the flexibility we need to be able to meet our constituents' direct needs and in an immediate fashion, instead of exactly what Mayor Holland was saying earlier about how the CMIP schedule is so far out. We have this limited amount of money, and you have to, in order to get on it, you have to get on it almost 5 years out. So absolutely, it'll be going through, hopefully, our administrator's office. It will be published, so the entire public will have access to the list, clearly.
So does that also means that the people that receive this money will be held accountable and turn back in reports for for how they use the money? I mean, just asking.
Yeah,
No.
so the recommendation that's out there right now is that this money be given to a 501c3. And if you all aren't super familiar with how that operates, 501c3s have very strict criterias which require them to do an audit, which we obviously would all have access and the public would. However, Commissioner Maddox, I'll use him as an example. Let's say he has a small neighborhood group that is not a 501 that wants to do some curb and sidewalk. And he wants to be able to get the money to them, but he also wants them to be accountable for that money. One of the things we'd ask commissioners to do is to run that money through a local 501c3 to that organization, so there's actual accountability for that money.
Does, one of the things about CNEP is CNEP, each project that the commissioners chose, because it was all infrastructure, was voted upon by the commission. Is it the committee's recommendation that the commissioners would bring forward their recommendations, like our appointments to boards and other things, and ask the whole commission to vote and vet them? Or at least vote on them? If not, I don't know how we would vet them all, but would there be a requirement that the commission vote on the, every time a commissioner wants to send some money to a group, would the commission need to vote on that?
Correct. Our hopes would be, we just discussed that recently, and yes, we are in favor of those projects coming in front of the commission. However, we would hope that the commission would handle them, much like what you said, Mayor, appointments. We don't really vet other commissioners' appointments, but we do sort of keep an eye on them and sort of, make sure that that's going smoothly. And we're recommending, our commission is recommending quality appointments.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Maddox?
Thank you. I just wanted to know, with the allocation of the funds, what would be the commissioner's role in that?
Well, when the committee and I discussed that, we specifically said that the commissioner would have the ultimate discretion on how that money was distributed within the guidelines of the original intent of the money, which was for healthy communities.
Go ahead. Let it finish.
Commissioner Townsend? Oh, do you have more questions, Maddox?
No,
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I don't want to throw no sand on the plan, but that was something that I had mentioned 2 years ago in regards to the funding. It being $500,000, not having enough capacity to reach I heard a whole community as a whole, and just giving, breaking it down per district, per commissioner, and giving them the option to pick or, at least mention those things that they'd like to see done in their districts. And that was something I mentioned, and I support it 100%. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. I'm looking at what was, and we're talking about something entirely different that the committee is bringing forward. For instance, Commissioner Kane just mentioned or inquired about the possibility of giving his portion of the money, or any of us, to a school. I'm looking at the front page, and that was something that was a no under the former scheme of things. What I would find helpful is a writing of what the proposals actually are. I get that the committee's recommendation is to apportion it by, district, including the mayor's portion. But I'm having difficulty following what exactly all of the proposed the changes are, when I'm looking at what was and should not be. That would be helpful.
Well, and I think we're using this as a work session. We're not, in terms of I think we need to reach a consensus. This is a 180-degree turn in terms of where we've been. Mm-hmm. And so first, I think we need to see, is there consensus to make that turn? If there is a consensus to make that turn, then a new guideline and set would need to be drafted that would identify, right now we have size of grants. It looks like 45,000 would be the maximum, not the minimum. You would have to have eligible organizations reviewed. grant qualification and evaluation criteria, presumably you'd have to have some kind of application form where people would have to fill it out and submit it to a particular commissioner. Presumably, and I don't know, I mean, we would have to decide, does it have to be spent, now for at-large and for the mayor, it could be spent presumably anywhere in the county. Would it be restricted if you have an organization that's doing good work in another district? Could you give it to an organization in another district? That would need to be identified as well, because it would be at the discretion of the commissioners. But what is the application? The other piece is we have a board right now, an independent board that reviews the applications. From what I'm understood of this proposal, that commissioner would be the sole decider in terms of who gets these grants. There would not be a third party who would review them. It would probably be handy to have a common application form that we all use that would be simple as they came through, particularly if we're going to vote on them, to have a common application form, but and to check off that they meet the criteria. But in terms of who decides, it would be up to the commissioner to decide. And then, in terms of accountability, presumably it would be the commissioner's responsibility to make sure they actually did the work, used the money in the way that they said they did. So I don't know, there's layers to this, but I think so if you want to address the qualifications if you're supportive of this change, then we need to, or enough people are supportive of the change that you're resigned to go along with it, then then we can start talking about what those criteria are. But I think it is a significant change. I mean, it's a 180-degree change from what we've been doing.
Well, I guess that's the point. I'm not against it. It's just that I don't know. I would like to see what all of these proposed issues are, as some bullet points or something, so we can then go forward with that. We're just kind of talking about it here, and there's so many tentacles to this. I think it would be helpful just to see, these are the new proposals, at least some bullet points, and then I think I would be better prepared to say, yes, let's go this or add this. Or I guess the one thing that I hear that troubles me most is having the commissioners be the sole decider. I don't have any problem with that. I'm just saying the administrative issues here. Are these funds the ones that had been in the past reviewed by Mr. Maddox and that group, or do I have the wrong?
That's the right group.
Okay, that is the right group. Okay.
So,
Mayor?
Commissioner McKiernan. I'm sorry, I looked the wrong way. Jane's next. Commissioner Philbrook's next.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner McPhilbrook does have a question. Okay, so I understand exactly what you're saying, Commissioner. I have some of the same questions. Like, I really, even if I absolutely love a group that I think they're going to do wonderful work, I really would like to have them vetted through the administration to make sure, that everything's been checked out, because you just don't know. And I don't want to be the one that hands over $45,000 and then 6 months down the line, they've been sued for embezzlement of something or whatever, because things happen. And I don't want to be that commissioner that gets hung out to dry. I have to be honest with you. I want to make sure that we're following all the rules and regs that we can to make sure that our money is spent the way it should be spent.
McKiernan and then Kane.
So I realize that this does represent a radical departure from what we've done previously. But there was the thought that we might be able to address on a more grassroots, on a more focused, on a more local level, some of the needs that exist in all parts of the community. There certainly are a lot of issues that we'll have to yet iron out in terms of the administration and the execution of this. I don't want to speak for my other committee members, but I will. We didn't necessarily want to go ahead and put any more effort into defining all of those criteria or those procedures until we saw whether or not there was broad support, at least for the concept, because otherwise we would have just spun our wheels to no good end in that case. I think we have to remember that even if we would choose to do that, and we would all be comfortable with how it comes out this year, we can change it again next year. And so we're not, this is not ironed, is etched in stone, rather. So it is a changeable process. And I think there are some things, for example, Commissioner Kane had brought up last year in our discussion about, areas of the community that get impacted, but sometimes there's an organization that has like a headquarters or a presence in one area of the community, but it affects another area. So we have to consider that. In terms of organizations having broad impacts across districts, I would certainly be open to commissioners teaming up and each pooling a piece of this so that you can ultimately make a larger, I'm sorry if this has already been said before I got here.
No, it's
okay. Distracted for a second. So I think, certainly it's a radical departure. As with any departure, there's pros and there's cons. And if we decide there are enough pros, then we'll move ahead figuring out all the specifics to the best of our ability. Then we'll come back and figure out if those specifics meet our needs well enough to actually move forward and go with it.
Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Ellison gave Maddox some money, didn't he, in one of those projects before? Not this particular deal, but he gave you money to help build your football field or whatever. And if any of you want to donate money to me, it's okay, I'll take it. I'm all about that, especially you, Mayor, since you live in District 5. Thank you. Thank you for the
Barely.
offer. And Hal, since you're the at-large all over the place, we'll take some of your money as well. For the record, I like the idea. I like the concept. And for anybody else that's watching this, the school district is going to get my money.
So I'll weigh in. I have a lot of hesitations about this. We talked about this at the beginning about this was on the table as an original idea of how to do it. I personally like the idea of having a third party do the vetting, receive the applications, to do the vetting of the projects, doing the grant awards, and then reviewing it. I like that structure on a lot of accounts because of the accountability that I think is cleaner with a group of people doing that. It's hard enough to track the number of projects. So how many did we fund this past year?
17.
17. So it's tracking 17 projects to make sure that they were funded, that they did what they said they were going to do is hard. So I worry about this a little bit. I think it sounds like a great idea to give away money. I also think for every friend you make, you're going to make 5 people unhappy, which is just the reality of the world. But I think that as we become the ones who are making the decision about the finances, it's complicated. So I prefer the simplicity of the way we've been doing it. I also have said, I told the committee when I talked about it, if there's a consensus to do this, then I'll get on board and move forward with it. I'm not so offended by it that I'm going to jump up and down. I would just prefer to do it the other way. So so that's just, if I had my druthers and it were up to me, I'd continue to do it the way we're doing it. But if people feel strongly about it and there's a consensus among the group to do it, then I think we'll try it for a year and see how it works. Commissioner Townsend.
I too have concerns about the administration of it. However, I can see the value of the money being allocated by district, and maybe the hybrid would be to have that money allocation by district, but let people send in applications to the committee or whatever the process was last year, and those applications be identified by district. I might get 5 in District 1, I might get none, but I mean that way there's still an allocation by district, but I'm uncomfortable with the administration I wouldn't want to do that.
Go ahead.
So I'd just like to comment in regard to the committee comments you've made about liking the review committee. I like the review committee too, but let me be direct. We've got significant committee issues, significant. And we didn't go down that route because it's long and it's detailed and it would have taken us a long time. But I've met with our committee people individually and spoken to many of them. And there are issues in reviewing these grants and the process that's been set out. So even if it's the commission's opinion to not, or to continue in the way we have been doing business, we've got some significant work in front of us because the committee review process has some significant problems. So.
Okay. Commissioner Walters, you were on the committee as well. Do you have any thoughts? You were one of the big three.
Well, sure, I've got some thoughts. I don't see this as that radical a change. I think we are replacing the Citizens Committee with the commissioners making decisions on where the money is going. But we're still trying to achieve the same goals. We still have the same money. So I think we're just tweaking the process. Maybe it's a big tweak, but I don't see it as a radical overhaul. We're still trying to address healthy living using charitable money from Hollywood Casino. So some of the things we were trying to challenge ourselves with is, are we serving the entire community? Are we somehow eliminating worthy causes because of a complicated submittal and application review process? And those were the kind of things we were trying to address. And I think we can address those. We can keep the best parts of the previous plan, and we could certainly review those after 2 years worth of experience, whether we should fund schools. Initially, the commission decided no. Maybe we change that. But I don't see it as quite as radical a change as possible. We're still trying to achieve the same goals. We're just trying to do it in a little different way.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Walker, and then Maddox.
I'm concerned. I've voiced that. I believe the formula of individual elected people having control of and designating funding is a formula for trouble. It reminds me of the appointment process we utilize. I voted for appointments that I was firmly against because they were made by the other commissioner. And I'm sure there's been people that have voted for some of mine that they did not care for, but it is a de facto reality that it is going to be very difficult to vote against any proposal brought forward by any commissioner. And it will only take one bad, dishonest, irreputable, and that's not the word, unsavory allocation of money to taint this whole process. Having an independent intermediary group provided us with a set of eyes and ears that, I personally have no experience in vetting charitable groups as to determine which is sincere, which this will help. I want no part of being involved in vetting or administering any of this. This is, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm not saying that some of the commissioners can't put the money in the right spot. Probably all of you can. Maybe I'm just doubting myself. I just do not like the idea of having control over money other than as a commission making a uniform decision. And what's going to happen, and I've said it, I'm going to put mine out there, and you're going to vote for it, and I'm going to vote for yours, and everybody's going to vote for everybody else's, and we're all going to be happy till one of them, hits the mud and splatters us all, and then we're going to be scrambling.
Commissioner Maddox, and then Commissioner McGill.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, I heard you speak to if we had a consensus. I just want to know before, because I've seen this in various other meetings where we say if we will have a consensus on a subject or a matter, and then I never see it again. I just want to know, how do we know what our consensus is today before we leave this meeting? Because I hear certain people speaking up about it. I hear certain people saying they're in favor of it. Just want to know, how do we get a consensus today as to where we stand on this decision? So,
Well, my inclination to that point is to take a straw poll to see if there's a consensus among the group. If there is, then we would, and as is often said, I think Commissioner Townsend is fond of saying, the devil's in the details. We wouldn't approve a new process until the details were in place. But if, again, it doesn't make sense to drill down into the details of how it would work if there's not a conceptual agreement by the majority of the commission. So if there is a consensus among the majority of commissioners to move forward, that if the plan were set up right, then we would support it, then I think it's worth. Now, the other reality is we could get all the way into the details, and the details are so deep that we turn back and say, you know what, it's too deep to fill in, we're going to do something different. But if, so I would, my inclination, if Commissioner Murguia wants to speak, but after that, I would be inclined to just check in with you all, see where people are generally, and if there's a consensus to drill down, at least, I think the consensus we need is to at least have the committee move forward to come up with more of a finalized plan that we would bring forward, addressing some of the details and discussion points that we've had and the concerns that have been raised tonight. If there's no, I'm sensing there probably is a majority here, but if there's not, then there's no sense in continuing to work, and we need to decide how to perfect the situation we have. So Commissioner Murguia, do you want to say something before
I do. I want to say something. You know, you guys, I need to be real upfront with you. Anytime one of us starts to say at a public meeting or in private even, that implies that our elected body or one of us or any of us could be disreputable or dishonest or do something like that, it's personally very insulting to me, I would tell you. And making those kinds of accusations or assuming that's going to happen without any evidence is very offensive. And I would caution all of us not to say that about one another or imply that it could potentially happen. What I would say is that same potential to happen could happen now. Each one of us gets a human being that we get to appoint to this committee. Human beings are not computers. They have feelings and emotions, and they have favorites and things that, and not favorites. And none of us are foolish or naive to believe that our appointments don't share our common beliefs. And we get elected because of what we're working on and what we believe in. And then we appoint people to help us move that vision forward. So let's all not act like politics isn't exactly what it is. And let's just be clear about that. And this is a nominal amount of money. And absolutely, we could collectively, through the current process, give money to an organization that is charged with embezzlement or convicted of some sort of criminal act. I'm not sure what the difference is that we're all collectively in trouble versus one individual commissioner. I think we all have learned that whether it's one of us, two of us, or all of us, I mean, the media pretty much lets all of us have it. So I can't be any more direct than that. I am obviously in favor of this. I agree with the committee that if it doesn't work out or people have some reservations, we can always change it.
Mayor,
I want to be very clear.
Go ahead.
I did not say in my comments, Commissioner Murguia, that anybody would be dishonest or irreputable. What I did say was we don't always know the people that we give money to, what they might do with it. And I think we've had, over the years, plenty of experience with the idea of misspent money, that people have been given for the right reason and the right purpose and have not done so. So nothing in my comments cast aspersions on anybody at this table. And secondly, you prepare for what is out there in the world and try to guard yourself against it. My only concern is who is going to vet which group gets this money and which for what purpose. That's the extent of it, and that's why I like an intermediary third-party committee. But if it is the consensus of a majority, I'll go along with it.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, I'm not quite sure where Commissioner Margia got the concept that somebody's talking about somebody else here at the table, because I don't think I heard anybody cast any dispersions against anybody else sitting at this table. All I heard were concerns of what might happen in changing our concepts and just putting that money out there. And so I want you to understand that if I ever have a dispersion, you'll hear it directly from me, okay? And I just want to make that very plain. So I have greatest respect for all the people at this table. We've all been elected to take care of our constituency and to fight for them and do some of the things they ask us to do. So I would hope we can continue to show respect for each other and not be casting any personal dispersions. I just don't see that happening right now. And I don't want anybody to feel like that's happening, because this is a very emotional issue. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments before we just check in? Again, we're not making binding action. It's a special session, and we don't have a request for action formally to vote on. But in terms of those who would just be in favor generally of asking the committee to go back and thoroughly outline this new direction, I just ask you to raise your hand. All right, so there are 6 commissioners who would like to go ahead and pursue that. Clearly, that's a majority. So I would ask the 3 committee members, you've heard the feedback tonight about the concerns, to go back and to draft a proposal similar to this one in terms of kind of an outline that we've been using, and then we can bring that forward at 7 o'clock. We can have an opportunity to fully discuss it before we vote, make sure it's the right plan. You might even distribute it to the commissioners ahead so people can give you some feedback on it, and then you can bring it back. As long as it's a open process, we can continue to have that dialogue, and then we can come back at the 7 o'clock and vote on it.
We can do that.
Yeah, Administrator Bach.
With this directive, and I will have Assistant County Administrator Joe Connor continue to assist your committee. I think he's most familiar with this and how it can work. I will ask him, as he's going through it, to draw a pretty heavy line in the evaluation that you're looking at, because as there is a big difference between sending out and receiving proposals that you're going to vet, and then the process of evaluating and looking at any kind of audit or expenditures that may happen thereafter. And I say that as a heavy line. There's a big difference in workflow and what might happen in that regard, and not one we're really there for, so we want to be sure and distinguish how that works. So I just let you know I will have him come in and work hard and make sure we get a good understanding of what we're bringing forward from there.
I believe that Commissioner McKiernan has already called me a good wet blanket, so I'll continue to play
I
that
don't
role.
recall that, but if the shoe fits.
Commissioner Kane.
Let's just make sure that we add the school districts and not necessarily just public schools either.
Okay. All right, so we have our directive from that. That concludes our conversation. We do have, we were going to come back after the 7 o'clock, but we could do it before the 7 o'clock. We need an executive session on litigation. How much time do you anticipate, Mr. Bach?
15 minutes.
I would entertain, and we will just move into the side room right here, and we'll give ourselves about a 10-minute recess to get there. But in starting at 6:20, I'll entertain a motion for 15 minutes of executive session for litigation.
Move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will be in executive session in 10 minutes.